Hi, everybody. These are our kitchen talks. I should label these kitchen talks. Macaroni, get off the table. See you guys, macaroni always wants to. He's a movie star.
Yeah.
Okay, so David and I were just talking to say, what should part 3 be? And by the way, I forgot to label the last one part 2, but I'll get around to it. You know me, you guys. Always a day late and a dollar short. So we're going to talk more about horary, because this is, like Dave was saying, this is what really convinces people about the accuracy and the role of astrology more than like what's your sun sign and just, the natal chart, right?
Yep.
So, which a lot can be learned from. Let me just say that I am one of those people. I've actually lived through a double Saturn return twice in my chart, which was crazy. And the second one, like you were saying, Saturn is a teacher planet. It brings what we would view as problems or challenges for us to take on. But I was so go with the flow by the time the second one came around. I was like, yeah, if the house burned down, who cares? I mean, I was so in the flow with everything that it really wasn't rocking my world. But that first one, which it had doubled, means Saturn returns into your natal chart between the ages of 27 and 30, 28 and 30?
Saturn's a 29.6 year cycle.
Okay.
So depending on where he was at in the cycle, it could be from 28 to about 31.
Right.
That he'll make a return to the exact same spot.
And everybody including you, from the ages of 28, 27 to 30 goes, oh man, that was one of the hardest times of my life. Everybody will tell you that. And Carl and Jung used to say, you're not an adult until you're in your 30s. You have to go through that Saturn return, right? Yeah. And then it comes back. What was the age I was at then? Was around 60 or was it around that? So it came back through again. A double Saturn return means Saturn's already in my my sun, or my sun is already...
Could have been in your progress chart at the same time.
Yeah, it was. So I already had this huge influence of Saturn, and a Saturn return was showing up, right? Yeah. So I've gotten double whammied, but it was cool, man. I learned so many lessons through that.
Some people are very cool with a Saturn return. It depends
how flexible you are.
Yeah, well, there's a number of factors that have to be considered. Not everybody going through a Saturn return is going to be in hell. That's the picture that's painted from a modern perspective.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's not necessarily true. You have to look at it in the bigger picture. You have to understand how that person is equipped to handle Saturn. I tell people that all the time. If Saturn is a strong influence in their chart, say it's the ruler of the sign that their sun is in, or their moon, or the ascendant, and it's well placed, then when that person has a Saturn transit or a Saturn influence in their life, they're not likely to be as, oh my God, as other people are. Okay. So you have to put it in the bigger picture. And that is one of the things that moderns are loath to do, because they haven't studied anything. And they don't understand natal. Natal explains to you the nature of the planets, the signs, and the houses. For instance, every planet has a testimony. The Chaldean order of planets was Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. Those 7, right? Everything beyond that is basically a fixed star influence. And they have a role to play, but it's not as important as the 7. And the moon, and this is something that, another misnomer with traditional astrology, most people think that Western astrology focuses only on the sun. There are literally readings that I give to people, I don't even mention their sun sign, because it's not that big of a deal. It's the biggest planet. It has the most influence, yes, but it's not playing that big of a role in what's going on in your life right now. And because I know that you know a little bit about your sun sign, I'm not going to repeat that.
No,
which
you
you
never
already
do.
know.
No.
So I'm looking to give you a reading about everything that may influence your life, but I'm hoping to find 1 or 2, at the most 3 salient points for you to focus on. This is where the energy's at. This is where you need to be spending your time and effort, and you will gain if you do. The rest of life that happens, I expect you to handle it, and if you start spending too much time in those other areas, you're going to fail in these. you're not going to get what you want in life. My goal is to get people to believe that astrology can play a positive role in your life. If I can convince you of that, then my next goal would be obvious. I want to convince you to have me do the interpretations for you. But Horary can answer so many everyday questions that cannot be answered by the natal chart. If someone comes to me and says, well, I'll give you a good example. A woman came to me, she was in Michigan, from New Orleans, and her husband had a home in Colorado Springs. And she comes to me and says, hey, would it be good for me to move to Colorado Springs? So I cast the chart and I'm looking at it and I'm going, I mean, normally I can answer that question in about 1 minute, sometimes 2 or 3, but I'm looking at it, and I go, well, moving to Colorado Springs would be good for you, but it's not, your husband's not going to like it at all. And she goes, oh, good. That's the reason why I wanted to move to Colorado Springs. I wanted to get a divorce. Now, that's where I say, look, if you're trying to formulate a question, the more specific you are, the better it is. But the real question should have been, if I move to Colorado Springs, will my husband divorce me? Then I could have answered it in 30 seconds, you see, instead of trying to take all these other things under consideration and look for them, and sometimes you'll miss them.
So the clearer the person who's getting the reading, the clearer they are and more specific they are.
The more you can really get it down to a yes or no. It's like someone says, I don't know if I want to move to LA or New York. You don't ask that question, should I move to LA or New York? Because the chart's going to reflect that indecision. So you would say the question should be, should I move to LA? Because that'll be a clear yes or no. And if you know what that one is, then you'll know whether or not you're moving to New York, right? So,
and like Joe and I should move to Florida, I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Okay. So everyday things, will I get divorced? How soon? I love doing kids charts, and that's natal too, but I love doing kids charts because sometimes you look at, the third house represents our K through 12 experience. The ninth house is our university experience, right? And if there's harsh aspects down in the K through 12, I tell the parent, look, don't push this kid, to get great. They're not. As a matter of fact, if you look up over like 10 or 11, I'll go, this is going to be just a social time for them. That's the only reason why they're going to love school. But they are destined for university. So give them a break, let them get C's just to get through, but believe me, they're going to bloom when they go to university, and you'll see that. Or sometimes it's not even university, it's like this person needs to belong in the fine arts, or they need to be involved in trades. Don't push them where they're not destined to go. All you're doing is delaying their journey, because parents have so much of an influence over their kids. And many parents, unfortunately, treat their children like possessions. They want to manipulate them. So Horary can answer questions like, I had a client call one day, and her and her husband came in for a reading. I gave them both readings. She's an attorney, he's a dentist. She calls me up one day, she just moved in this new house, and she goes, I lost $250. Here's what happened. My husband comes home, he hands me $250 cash. We had invited friends, and we love them, but we don't know them yet. And so I wanted to clean up the house just in case, make sure there's no temptation. And she goes, I put the $250 on the counter. That's the last I remember seeing it. Now when I go there, it's not there. I've checked my pants. It's not in any of my pants. I checked my purse. I checked the car. Where is it at? So I cast the chart, and I say, do you have an upstairs? She goes, yeah. I said, it's upstairs. And the indicator was that it was near a water source with heat. I said, I want you to go, you got a bathroom upstairs? Yeah, we got a bathroom. Husband's listening on the other line. I didn't know this. He goes, it's not upstairs in the bathroom. Nobody uses that bathroom. But the wife used it this time because she had company coming over. She didn't want to use the downstairs bathroom to take her shower. She used the upstairs bathroom. So what did she do? She stuck the $250. I said, it's about waist high, right? It's not on the ground. It's not up here. It's about waist high. She looks in the upstairs bathroom. On the back hook of the door was her robe, and right in the pocket was the $250. She found it in 2 minutes. Natal astrology cannot answer that question. If you want to really help people out as an astrologer, then you need to study natal astrology. You need to study Horary Astrology. It explains every planet has a testimony. I try to use humor in my astrology to help people learn, but there's one planet out of the 7, I know you'll get this one, there's one planet out of the 7 that could be said will rip the rose-colored glasses off your face and show you the reality. Which one is it? Saturn.
Oh, right. Okay.
Never. Saturn is always, he's that kind of a testimony, right? And so they all have qualities. Astrology is a qualitative language. And it's not a zero-sum game. You have to, if you're going to be a successful traditional astrologer, you have to literally make a bit of a consciousness shift to understand a different worldview, a different way of viewing the universe. One of the best examples I give for people our age was, if you ever read Carlos Castaneda, when he was studying with a shaman down in northern Mexico or southern United States, the Yaqui Indians. His benefactor, his teacher, was someone named Don Juan, and Don Juan was constantly trying to get Carlos to shift the way he thinks. He was a Western, highly educated, I think it was a sociology professor at UCLA or something like that, so he was a smarty pants, right? And Don Juan would literally slap him between the shoulder blades on the back to get him to shift. He used to tell Don Juan, "I want you to go to the market and imitate the women that are in the market." He would do anything to get him to shift the way that he views the universe. One of the best books out there to start on that part of the journey is to read, I think it's E.M.H. Tilliard is his last name. Great English scholar, Shakespeare specialist, acknowledged world scholar. He wrote a book called The Elizabethan Worldview.
I read it.
That's the way that they viewed the
universe.
It's very different.
It totally makes sense. It's this little tiny book, and tell them the title of it again.
The Elizabethan Worldview.
Yeah. So what it is it shows at that time, in that era, how they really understood the universe, and that everything had its place and it had its time. Much of it being observed through nature.
Yes.
And so that's why when I talk about destiny, it's about things line up so that is really the conclusion it has to come to, because it just makes sense. It's like, here's a quick story. Ram Dass tells a story. So he goes to India, and he has his teacher there, and he hasn't been there for a long time, and he's going, and they get to this big huge festival late, and by the time they show up, there's almost no one there, but who's standing there but his teacher? And he goes, "Oh my gosh," and he's just beyond, how did you know? And he said, Ram Dass said, he isn't psychic. What he would explain to Ram Dass, well, of course you would be here because it just makes sense. So, and the more that you're in the moment, which, I just preach it constantly to myself while I'm preaching it to you, is that the more you're in the moment, life just makes sense. It just flows the way life flows, right?
Yes.
Right. Go ahead.
I think I mentioned it earlier, but I look at charts and I often give advice of what, even to me, it sounds crazy.
Right. Yeah.
But that's where the planets are lined up. And if astrology always requires work. If I give you a reading and I say this is going to happen, if you just sit here twiddling your thumbs, UPS is not going to drop off that package with a bow tie on your front doorstep. Astrology 99% of the time requires action, and I tell people to do things that sound crazy, but in fact, again, now is the time. It's the perfect time to exercise this, and that is sometimes not just horary, but that's electional. If you had asked me the question, when would be a good time? A good example is I work with a lot of vets, right? And a lot of vets have PTSD, or they have physical limitations, disabilities, and they're not getting the help they need, and so they have a Jupiter transit of the 12th house. 12th house is, amongst other things, institutions, prisons, hospitals, and such.